Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/get-started. That's greenlight.com/get-started.
What did you go see this last weekend?
Nope.
You don't want to tell me then?
I'm not doing this with you. No, we're not doing the bit.
Well, what's this? What is this thing? Yeah,
oh, it looks like a ransom letter made out of cut up magazine letters that somebody slid under the door.
Huh. Has no one figured out ransom messaging technology yet to come up with a better solution than that?
Yeah, this is actually the worst way to do it. You have a ton of glue to catch fibers and traceable scissor marks on the paper.
This is just trivia you happen to know, right?
Yeah. I mean, I have no real experience with anything. Anyway, let's see what it says. Okay, we have Eli, the heir to the Bosniak Empire.
Oh, okay, I see. This has to do with this week's episode and the Patty Hearst kidnapping and yeah. Hey, what exactly is the Bosniak Empire?
Oh, it's mostly a half-chewed puppy Kong and a one-bedroom sinkhole in New Jersey. It goes on here. We demand you change the name of your podcast. Signed, Citations Needed.
Absolutely not. That's not going to happen.
Okay, just the next line says they're going to kill him if we don't.
Yeah, that didn't move the needle that much, Heath.
Yeah, same. I thought that would, but no.
No. So why did they cut up a bunch of magazines if they signed the letter at the bottom?
Well, they are journalists. The only thing keeping print media afloat is cut up glued ransom notes, right?
Oh, that's fair. You want to get Chinese?
Yeah.
All right.
Give me a General So.
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, the podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts, because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm Noah, and I'm going to be leading this cult, but to make it work, I'm going to need a few disciples. First up, the reason the Hail Bob comment isn't planning a return visit until the year 4385, Tom and Cecil.
Oh, that's a good thing, too, because I just bought a pair of Nikes, but I still have a lot of work to do, so...
I once went to a poetry reading where the poet screamed "Hail Bop" into the mic for 3 straight minutes, and I think that's why it's not coming back. I think it's one of the cringed so hard it never is coming back. Yeah.
Okay, see, so you went and you said you weren't going to talk about my readings anymore on the show. You said it was good. You said it was good.
I never said that.
You didn't say it was bad. You left before saying it was bad.
I agreed with you when you said it. And also joining us tonight, the guy who you can always count on to spike the poison Kool-Aid, Heath Enright.
Shots. Let's do this. Jaeger bombs.
And of course, Eli can't be here tonight. He's been a physical and emotional wreck since he found out that you weren't a patron yet. If you'd like to learn how to nurse him back to health, be sure to stick around to the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Cecil, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
The Symbionese Liberation Army.
And Tom, you read the article while Googling how to get away with transporting pipe bombs for completely benign reasons. Are you ready to tell us the tale?
I am, Noah. Let's do this thing.
All right. So what drew you into this topic?
Well, I was originally going to write this essay about the kidnapping of Patty Hearst, and I promise that I will get to that. It is a great story. It's actually worthy of more time and attention than I'm going to be able to give it tonight. But as I began to read about the kidnapping, I realized that actually the craziest story I've probably ever read ends with the kidnapping of Patty Hearst, but absolutely begins much earlier, and that the backstory to that kidnapping is actually so much more interesting than I could have ever imagined. There will be sex and cyanide-tipped bullets. There will be incompetent cops and misguided theater kids on a rampage. There will be intrigue and stupidity and Kwanzaa. This is going to be amazing.
Wait, are we finally doing Citation Needed the Musical? Is that what you're describing?
Ooh, on a week when Eli's not here, too. That'll be great.
The story of the Symbionese Liberation Army, or SLA, is really the story of Donald DeFreeze, who was the cult leader that began this whole crazy mess. DeFreeze was born in Cleveland, Ohio. An auspicious start. In 1943, he was the oldest child among 8 siblings, and his home life was, to be extremely charitable, unpleasant. His mother was a nurse at a convalescent home. His father was a violent psychopath who, as a punishment, broke both of DeFreeze's arms on 3 separate occasions.
Jesus.
Jesus Christ.
Both his arms as one of the, like, it's not like he broke one arm and then broke, but both his arms 3 times that happened. So DeFreeze, whose legs remained unscathed, used them to run away from home at the age of 14.
So his mom worked and lived at a convalescent home. Sorry, guys. Tom left a joke break in the notes right after fled from extreme physical abuse as a child. That's the best I could do. That was the last one in. Everybody else had left that spot blank.
Now, because it was the 1950s and the world was utterly insane, Wikipedia has this to say about 14-year-old DeFreeze's next step. Quote, he moved to Buffalo, New York, where he lived with the Reverend William L. Foster, a fundamentalist minister, and his family. End quote. How does a 14-year-old kid make his way from Cleveland to Buffalo and then find a minister to take him in? Why does that minister take him in? We will never know, because something, it was the 1950s, and kids could basically just hobo their way around the country without that journey meriting more than a throwaway mention.
Yeah, kids were kind of like a couch on the side of the road until like 1990. Or like the take a penny, leave a penny thing. It was simpler times.
Had to be a long trip. His 2 arms in cast. He basically had to like shout hitchhiking at like all the passing cars they're going by.
Thumb, you can't see my thumb.
Now, DeFreeze struggled to adapt and ended up joining a street gang in the city of Buffalo, and he quickly got into trouble for stealing from parking meters. First the coins and later the whole car in front of the meter. This caused the first of many run-ins with the law. DeFreeze was sent to the state reformatory in Elmira, New York. So look this up. State reformatories in the 1950s were basically the worst possible places. They were essentially juvenile prisons, just full of violence and neglect. I would actually go into more details, but imagine, I don't know, a juvenile prison run by the state at a time when a 14-year-old kid was of such little value they could fuck off from Cleveland to Buffalo without anyone noticing something amiss. So DeFreeze stayed at the reformatory until he turned 18, at which time the state was done with him and he was released, which sounds good at first, but consider this. He hadn't been properly educated. The prison where he had spent the last 4 years was, in his words, full of, quote, nothing but fear and hate day in and day out, end quote. And
Would
now
public school be that much different?
Now released at the age of 18, he was literally just turned out into the world with nothing. He had no caseworker, no job prospects, no money, no belongings at all of any kind, and no education. The state literally walked him to the front door and then shut that door behind him and washed their hands of him. And I'm not saying any of this should offer an excuse for his later behavior, but I am saying that some shit is absolutely predictable.
Yeah, you know what they say. Juvie in Buffalo, cyanide bullets, orgy of violence with the cast of Fame, Kwanzaa, Marxist Army. It's the same old story. And now we know better, but it's different times. Now we have Common Core math. It's different.
So DeFreeze then made his way from Elmira to Newark, and there he met Gloria Thomas, whom he married in 1963. Gloria had 3 kids at the time she married DeFreeze, and she had 3 more with DeFreeze. But things were not good.
But don't you mean therefore?
I do, as a matter of fact. Please hold. Gloria had 3 kids at the time she married DeFreeze, and she had 3 more with DeFreeze. Therefore, things were not good.
Hence, from experience, I can tell you.
Here's a story.
of a man named Tommy.
Donald DeFreeze chafed at family life, and he tried on many occasions to just call a mulligan on that shit and leave. In 1964, he left his family until Gloria had him arrested for desertion. The pair reconciled and moved to L.A., but DeFreeze still struggled, saying, quote, I just couldn't take it anymore. I was slowly becoming a nothing, end quote.
You could just get arrested for deserting your wife and kids. Men bear such an unfair burden in child rearing. It's ridiculous. Oh, I can't be a cum sprinkler. Whatever.
No, I'm sure those court-ordered commitments worked out great for the women of the early 60s. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So DeFreeze left again. This time, instead of being arrested for desertion, DeFreeze was stopped by the police as he walked down the San Bernardino Freeway. That's the 212, trying to hitchhike his ass away from his wife and 6 kids. When the police stopped him and searched him, he had a suitcase in which the cops found a few normal suitcase type things, but also a sawed-off rifle, a butter knife he had sharpened into a shiv, and a tear gas pencil bomb, which is basically a pipe bomb with a timer on it. This was in his suitcase. And the police just let him go. And he eventually wandered back home to his family.
Listen, officer, I'm just trying to kill an ostrich in the desert and say, this is normal. Am I being detained? Oh, this is America.
But he's out of prison now. Like, he could just have a real knife. He doesn't need to sharpen a fucking spoon anymore. I don't understand this.
Maybe he's frugal, Noah.
I guess.
He's sharpening the butter knife with another knife. Hold on. I guess I just already had.
In 1965, back at his family home, DeFreeze was arrested for shooting a gun in his basement. A fact made most incredible by the existence of a basement in Los Angeles. When he was asked why he was playing Range Master in the basement of his home, DeFreeze offered this little gem, quote, I started playing with guns and fireworks. Just anything to get away from life and how unhappy I was, end quote. The charges were dropped.
He starts acting like the world's shittiest downstairs neighbor and hopes his wife will just kick him out.
2 years later, the police stopped DeFreeze while he was riding his bicycle. They stopped him because he ran a red light. And also because in the basket of his bike, he had a goddamn pipe bomb sticking up out of the basket.
What?
He was just riding around the neighborhood with a bomb in like that little old lady farmer's market basket. And when the cops searched him, he had another bomb secreted away in one of his pockets along with a pistol. So DeFreeze was given 3 years of probation.
Really? Probation? Cops just like, is that a baguette with a bump stock coming out of your farmer's market? Whatever. Get out of here, you scam. It's cool.
Now, you might think that the second time that someone gets caught with bombs and guns walking about the neighborhood and they've been shooting shit in their basement and saying dark emo shit, that might warrant more than a touch of probation. The probation officer actually agreed with me here, noting that they were, quote, deeply troubled, end quote, by DeFreeze. A report at the time described Donald as having, quote, a fascination with firearms and explosives, end quote. Psychiatric recommendations at the time recommended he be jailed, calling him dangerous. DeFreeze was instead given an additional 5 years of probation. So now, while he was on probation, DeFreeze and an accomplice kidnapped the caretaker of a synagogue for literally no reason at all. They acknowledged that they had no motive for this crime. They just decided to kidnap some guy. DeFreeze was arrested, which was obviously then a violation of his probation, and he was returned very briefly to jail. The prosecutor in the kidnapping case dropped the charges since he figured DeFreeze was already in jail.
They're just calling the synagogue with that voice modulator thing. We'll bring him back when we get bored. We didn't really think through the plan. Somebody invent Nintendo. This is ridiculous.
Somehow, he spent basically no meaningful time in jail because later that same year, in October of 1969, police in Cleveland caught DeFries on the roof of a bank, which is not where people usually hang out. When he was searched, DeFries had a lockpicking kit, 2 pistols, a dagger, and a goddamn hand grenade. He was, of course, arrested, but bail was set at only $5,000, which Donald easily paid with money he later admitted he had stolen.
Well, he's certainly making up for a childhood unarmed, that's for sure.
Upped his knife game quite a bit, too, yeah. But why would he be on the fucking roof? Right? I've been thinking about this all night. Did he think there's like be a roof door that he could pick the lock on? Was he planning to explode his way in with the grenade? Could he think of no less suspicious a place to hide until nightfall? I'm just saying, I feel like maybe this plan was doomed from the start, like the synagogue guy, right?
Maybe he had 2 hand grenades and one blew him up there.
Now, how do I get down? God damn it.
A month. 1 month later, DeFries got into a shootout with the police, and he was again arrested, though the charges he faced somehow didn't relate to the open-air gun battle with the cops, but for the stolen cashier's check he had tried to cash after taking it from a prostitute he had just beaten. He was convicted of the theft of the cashier's check and sent to Vacaville prison.
Some John starts pulling on his wallet. Sorry, babe. I only take wire transfers and fucking cashier's checks. That's it.
You take Dogecoin? Fucking no.
It was at this prison that the seeds for the Symbionese Liberation Army would germinate. In prison, DeFries joined the Black Cultural Association. Now, the BCA was connected to the University of California at Berkeley, and students from Berkeley routinely met with prisoners to assist them with their education. And since they were Berkeley students in the late 1960s, to engage the prisoners in lengthy discussions about far-left politics. Though, as we'll see later, it's unclear exactly what politics DeFries actually held.
Okay, the most surprising detail is that DeFries was black. Like, I didn't catch that. All the absurdly lax policing made perfect sense until just now. And I was like, okay, that's insane.
I had to erase several jokes from the notes when I reached this part of the essay, yeah.
Eventually, DeFries left the Black Cultural Association, and he formed his own group he called Unisight. Members included 2 white guys from Berkeley and a former Black Panther. This group, now beginning to coalesce around DeFries, was the genesis for the Symbionese Liberation Army, with only one problem. DeFries was still in jail. But he had an idea.
First, I climb up on the roof.
Not even that complicated. DeFries' idea was to not be in jail anymore. I don't want to overcomplicate this guy. This guy is not playing 4D chess. Instead, he was transferred from Vacaville to Soledad prison in 1972. And Soledad had a program that allowed prisoners to work off-site. And off-site sounded way better than on-site when on-site is prison. It says that DeFries escaped from Soledad, but he escaped the same way 1,000 shitty stepdads escape. He just went to work one day and kept on walking. That was the escape. The guy with the bombs and the guns and the hand grenade and the shootout with the police. He escaped prison by just not going back to the prison after his shift repairing a boiler ended. That's it. That was the escape.
God. Do y'all think maybe Andy Dufresne was just really into crawling through poop? It makes for a very different ending to that story.
Donald made his way then to Oakland, where he was hidden from the Keystone cops that lazily sort of policed the country in the 1970s. It was in Oakland that the Symbionese Liberation Army was formally begun.
All right. Well, we've made it all the way around to the topic that this episode is named after, so I guess that means it's time for a break and a little apropos of nothing.
It stings.
Ouch. right, gentlemen, take your seats. Welcome to the second and final day of 1960s Police Academy. Now pay close attention, because the stuff we are going to disinterestedly skim today might just save your life.
And the lives of others, sir?
Nah. Anyway, who can tell me the first rule of policing that we learned yesterday?
Ooh. Don't create extra paperwork.
Ah, that's right. Yes, arresting people. Paperwork. Looking the other way. No paperwork. It's really that simple. All right, so with that in mind, imagine you pull someone over and you discover that they are carrying a pipe bomb. What should you assume? Martin.
That it's for defensive purposes only.
Okay, sure, yeah, that would work. Still illegal to have, though, so you could do better. Let's try you, Ricky.
That it's a metal candle.
Metal candle, yes, exactly. Ha. All right, and Dave, let's say that same suspect has a butter knife sharpened up like a scalpel, you know?
He probably just keeps his butter frozen.
Ah, yes, there, see? Frozen butter. Very good. All right, one last question. Steve, you get into a shootout with a suspect. You arrest that person unless...
unless they win.
They win. That's right. Yes. All right. Well, it sounds like you guys are ready to serve and protect. All right. So pick up your badges on the way out. Remember, when you hear the screams of children from the other room, just take comfort in the fact that it ain't you.
And we're back. When we last left off, DeFreeze was not the droid the cops were looking for, apparently. So he decided to raise an army. Tom, how does that work out for everybody?
All right, so if you're like me, when you first heard of the Symbionese Liberation Army, you might have thought, wait, who are the Symbionese? And are they doing the liberating, or do they need to be liberated? And how do I not know about the plight of the poor Symbionese? Don't feel bad. Like God or successful MLM boss babes, there is no such thing as a Symbionesian. There is no place known as Symbionia, and there is no need to be concerned about the freedom of these Symbionese. The word is totally made up. According to DeFreeze, quote, the name Symbionese is taken from the word symbiosis, and we define its meaning as a body of dissimilar bodies and organisms living in deep and loving harmony and partnership in the best interests of all within the body, end quote. So I just hope that clears things up for you guys. So what DeFreeze was really advocating was that the SLA be the unifying theory and force that would, like, Voltron together all other leftist ideologies and goals. The SLA would be the thing that brought together anti-racist, anti-capitalist, and feminist struggles. DeFreeze really believed, or I mean, at least he sold it pretty hard, that the SLA would be the thing that sparked the revolution that combined these forces into an unstoppable leftist juggernaut.
Okay, if this turns out to be the Bernie Sanders origin story, I'm going to be really fucking happy. I love Bernie Sanders.
So a bit of a spoiler, but yeah, no, it turns out that DeFreeze is actually Bernie's left leg. So.
All right, good Voltron, everybody. You guys go do robberies and kidnappings. I'll get ignored in the Senate for 40 years because America is a toxic hellscape. Great. I'm way too ahead of my time.
Now, of course, any hyper-militant ideological cult needs a good symbol, but DeFreeze wasn't a graphic designer and nobody was willing to work on spec, so instead he just appropriated Kwanzaa. For real, what? He adopted for the SLA a symbol of a 7-headed hydra with each head representing one of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa.
And I want to be the first to say their logo looks like one of those stretchy, sticky hands made out of goo that you whip things with.
It does, though. It looks exactly like that.
Does.
It's all covered in carpet
those things
fuzz.
Were so, yeah, right? God, the 80s when here, kid, have a disease vector was enough to sustain the vending industry for 3 fucking years. Oh, they were so gross.
Of course, DeFreeze was going to need a cooler name than Donald if he was going to start a Kwanzaa-based leftist terrorist organization. So he took up the moniker of Field Marshal Sinkyu.
You're welcome.
Sinke was based off the purported name of the leader of the slave rebellion from the takeover of the slave ship Amistad.
Okay, well, pronouncing it Sinkyu actually makes a lot of sense there, right?
He then took the surname of Matume, the Swahili word for prophet. So, like pretty low-key, humble kind of stuff.
Okay, but Sinkyu Matume sounds good, but the field marshal part is going to scare
Field
people,
Marshal,
right?
Field Marshal Sinkyu Matume. There you go.
Good Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, like you do. Donald. His name is Donald. No domestic terror cult is complete without its followers. So let's talk about the SLA members at this point. The first founding member was Patricia Soltiskisk. I probably mispronounced that.
Crushed it.
She actually owned the safe house in Oakland that DeFreeze fled to after his daring mosey away from prison. She and DeFreeze hit it off. They became lovers, and together they created the first SLA literature. 2 of the Berkeley students, theater majors, by the way, who had met with DeFreeze in prison, Willie Wolf and Russ Little, also met up with DeFreeze to start the SLA. And by the end of that summer, the SLA had also recruited Joe Ramiro, a Vietnam veteran activist. The Symbionese Liberation Army now had members. About 5 or so.
Almost 1 for each head of the Hydra. So
Yeah.
close. Pretty good.
But plenty to start a podcast,
Hey.
But they didn't have a clear focus or goal.
All the more reason to make a podcast.
Until that is, they heard about Marcus Foster. Marcus Foster appears, maybe at first glance, an unlikely target for the SLA. Marcus Foster was not, say, a right-wing warmonger. Marcus Foster was instead the first black school superintendent in Oakland. But Marcus made the mistake of introducing a plan to give students school ID cards.
Wow.
And that the SLA could not abide.
Oh, that was the whole thing?
That's it.
That was
literally all of it. They just wanted to give them school IDs. And this was unacceptable because of fascism or something along those lines. It's not any clearer than that, no matter which article you read about this. I promise you.
Okay, this feels like just a pet peeve of one of the Berkeley kids, right? He's like, all right, let's dismantle capitalism, sure. But first, here's the thing. I keep forgetting to bring my student ID to the library, and I have to walk back through the quad and then back in my dorm. Okay, but after then, the proletariat can rise up after that. But we got to do the ID card thing.
So, seriously, the SLA launched a plan to fucking murder Marcus Foster for trying to give kids student IDs. A plan, by the way, that Foster actually withdrew his support for. But details. So members of the SLA surprised Foster and Robert Blackburn as they were leaving a school board meeting. Foster was shot with hollow point bullets whose hollow spots had been packed with cyanide to make super duper sure that Foster would not survive, and he very much did not. Blackburn, Foster's deputy, was shot with a shotgun and grievously wounded for, I guess, being next to a guy who had at one time briefly supported school IDs for kids.
Okay, let's check to see if I have everything for the assassination. Cyanide bullets, mercury tip bayonet. Ooh, I almost forgot my botulism grenade. Man.
Yeah. It's already
building.
a fucking bullet. Just like poisoning the bullet is like spiking the alcohol, dude. You're just making work for yourself.
The SLA was, if nothing else, spectacularly well armed, even though they weren't all that bright.
See, that should be the motto on our money. Right?
I mean, they had lots and lots of guns, guys. Many of them they modified to make them fully automatic, or they sawed them down to make high-power weapons more easily concealed. But concealment was weirdly not a strong suit of the SLA. because while riding in a van that had literally had crates full of guns in it, two members of the SLA, Joseph Ramiro and Russell Little, were pulled over. And when the cops saw the not at all covered or concealed crates of guns in the van, he drew his weapon and a shootout occurred. Now, amazingly, neither the cop nor the SLA members were actually hit, but Ramiro and Little were arrested. And the gun that Ramiro had used to shoot at the cop was actually the same gun that was used in the murder of Marcus Foster. Ramiro and Little were arrested and convicted for the murder since they had shot at a cop with the fucking murder weapon. But here's the rub. They didn't actually kill Marcus Foster. Foster was in fact murdered by Patricia and DeFries, who shot Blackburn.
Well, I mean, given what we know so far, they're both going to get off with noogies anyway, so why should that matter?
So now with two of their own in prison, and the wrong two at that, the SLA lunatics were pretty pissed off. They began planning both their revenge and their master plan. And they wrote those plans down and had pictures and like evildoer planning stuff. And they had all of this stuff at one of their safe houses when that got tipped off, and they had to leave their safe house and move. And the idiot SLA schmucks poured 20 gallons of gasoline all over the interior of the safe house and then lit a fire.
Guys, what the fuck are you doing? The planning stuff, it's illegal. Pad and a napkin. I'm holding it in my hand, right? And you're setting the house on fire. Oh my God. All right, I'm gonna leave it here, I guess. I don't know.
So the thing is that after they set the fire, they buttoned up and locked the house down before leaving, which means that the fire raged until it ran out of oxygen from all the closed doors and windows, and then it just kind of sputtered out. The FBI raided the house and found documents including pictures of Patty Hearst and a plan of action to be taken, quote, for the full moon on January 17th, end quote. Now, naturally, the FBI did not warn Patty or anyone in the Hearst family. To be fair to the FBI, the SLA did not strike on January 17th, but instead waited until February 4th to kidnap the publishing heiress. But heiress is actually a bit much here. Patty Hearst was not like first in line to the Hearst fortune with her own diamond-coated rosebud or anything. She actually lived in a shitty part of town with her fiance, a math teacher. The math teacher, by the way, they got together when she was his 16-year-old student and he was her 23-year-old teacher. So,
dude.
Patty had a stipend, but she was very far from rich, and her fiance had pretty much no money at all.
Okay, but where did he stand on school IDs?
The SLA didn't know any of this. They thought that Patty Hearst, as a member of the publishing powerhouse family, was just Scrooge McDucking it all day in a vault of gold coins. She also seemed a good symbol for the excess of the wealthy oligarchy that the SLA was kind of sloppily opposed to. On the 4th of February, the SLA knocked on Patty's door and asked to use the phone before forcing their way into the apartment. They proceeded then to brutally beat Patty's fiance while demanding to know where the safe was located.
If only one of them had thought to tell DeFries it was on the roof, right?
Now, of course, there was no safe because anyone with a safe full of money wouldn't dream of living in the shit neighborhood that Patty and her creepy math teacher fiance lived in.
Okay, regardless of the neighborhood, what were they picturing happened? Like, all right, Patty, you're an adult now. We're a giant rich family. Here's a credit card for emergencies and 5 bars of gold bullion. Don't spend it all on the What the fuck? And then when it turned out that that's obviously dumb and not what happened, the SLA just they just did like a yes and kidnapping on the spot that they improvised.
Well, they were undeterred by that reality, Heath, and they continued to pummel fiancé Stephen Weed, breaking several of his ribs and other bones, while other SLA members absconded with Patty. Kind of. Let me set the scene for you guys. Stephen is being beaten to a pulp, but somehow manages to get up and run, bloody and with his hands tied, out of the apartment.
Faster than Josh Hawley running away from protesters he tuned up, I imagine.
Fuck that guy so hard.
The SLA guys throw Hearst over their shoulder, and they run out to the getaway car, and they go to throw her in the trunk. But the trunk accidentally closes. So they have to put Hearst down and then fish the keys out of their pockets. And then Patty fucking bolts. But Patty's hands are tied, and her legs are tied, and she's blindfolded. So she just runs face first into her own garage door.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
That's amazing. They couldn't not have stopped and had to laugh for a while.
Right? Meanwhile, Stephen has made his way to the front door of his neighbor, but he's been beaten so badly he can't speak, and the neighbors don't recognize him. So then they just don't let him in. Patty is just scooped back up, thrown in the trunk, and the SLA guys spray the apartment building with automatic gunfire, like for safe measure, before driving off.
Gasoline guy from before just lights the getaway car on fire. Fuck, sorry, I panicked. I thought we had books in here or something.
Except then they get pulled over for a broken taillight just a few blocks away. And they've got Hearst in the trunk. But as the cop is talking to them, he gets a call that there were gunshots. So the cop lets the SLA guys go so he can race to the scene of the crime committed by the guys he literally just let go. And so they go.
Just fade to black. That's it. Right there. Yeah. We just fade it perfectly to black.
All right, so now the SLA has Hearst, but they did not actually have a plan. They knew they wanted a prisoner exchange. Hearst for their two guys, but they weren't sure exactly how that should be done or what else to ask for. So they didn't do really shit for 3 days. No ransom, nothing. They blindfolded Hearst and confined her to a closet until they hatched the next part of their scheme.
Okay, so the whole plan was, all right, she probably has a pile of gold like a dragon from the rich family. End of plan. That was the plan.
Yeah, write it down. Light it on
That's
fire.
not even a legal pad.
Can someone shake her? See if the gold just falls out.
So first they demanded that they would release Hearst if the state would release Ramiro and Little, but that was just a non-starter. So they had to go back to the drawing board. They then asked for a ransom to be paid in the form of a food distribution plan for the poor. And even that plan was not really very well thought out. The value of that ransom ranged from $4 million up to $400 million, depending on when they asked. And to be fair to the
do ranges for ransoms?
They kept asking for different shit, and it was just fucking bonkers.
Okay.
And to be fair to the SLA, this food was sorely needed because our country does pretty much nothing or less in terms of taking care of its neediest citizens. In fact, the food distribution that they did do at one point had to be stopped because so many people showed up for the food that violence in the crowd erupted amongst the hungry.
Just back on the voice modulator call. Okay, that was like 1 day of food. Teach all the poor people to fish? Is that maybe?
Meanwhile, Patty is captive in a closet in a safe house, and she is kept blindfolded. 4 days after she was first kidnapped, she refused to eat, afraid she'd be poisoned.
No, they need the poison for their bullets, lady. Come on.
Her captors fucked with her constantly, only letting her take the blindfold off to watch or read coverage of her own kidnapping. And as time wore on, they worked to convince Patty that her family had refused to pay what was demanded, though that was not strictly speaking true. Patty's father actually used all of his available assets to try to pay the ransom, and when he ran out of his own money, he went to the family's board of directors to beg for more. And it was the board of directors who refused to provide additional funds. Nevertheless, the SLA convinced Patty that her family had chosen money over her freedom. She was completely isolated. She was held captive for months. She was fed a steady diet of propaganda. She had seen her fiance beaten nearly to death and was terrified not to cooperate or play along with her captors. Eventually, she was taught to assemble and disassemble shotguns blindfolded and to recite SLA literature verbatim. As Patty spoke about SLA ideology, she was being taped.
They did end up making a podcast. I knew there'd be a happy ending in here somewhere. That's so nice.
Afraid for her life, Patty Hearst placated her captors and denounced her family, her former life, and her fiance. She took her SLA name, Tanya, after an associate of Che Guevara. On one taped communication, Hearst is given the option of leaving or joining the SLA, and she emphatically agrees to join. She later, and I think obviously credibly, claims that she did not believe that she would really be let loose and that she would have been murdered if she didn't agree to join the SLA.
Look, Patty, one of the heads of our Hydra is in jail, so we need a new number 6. What do you say? You could be on the podcast.
The SLA...
Chapo Safe House. That'd be the name of their podcast.
The SLA needed to show off their new recruit, to show the world that they had converted this powerful capitalist heiress to their cause. So on April 15th, 1974, the SLA, with Hearst, robbed the Hibernia Bank in San Francisco. Famously, Hearst is seen in video, armed and very much engaged in that robbery. The SLA stole 10 grand and shot 2 civilians, but the real point of the whole enterprise was to showcase their true conquest, Patty Hearst, a.k.a. Tanya.
Okay, I feel like that's the opposite of what they should have done there. They're back on the phone again with the modulator. Okay, you're saying we lowered the ransom value just now. Fuck, all right. You know, we're going to get a kid from Berkeley from the math department instead of theater. We're going to call you back. Fuck. You know a math guy.
So all of them are obviously incompetent nitwits with no real plan and no real ideology that makes any coherent sense. And so they went shopping.
Yeah, I feel like having an extra 10 grand was at least part of the point, though, right?
On May 16th, 1974, 2 SLA members, William and Emily Harris, went to Mel's Sporting Goods in Los Angeles for supplies. And just like on a lark, William decided to shoplift and was caught by a security guard. William pulled out a revolver to shoot the guard, but the guard knocked the gun out of William's hand and put a handcuff on him. At this point, Hearst, who was in the van across the street, she saw the commotion and she started shooting at the store. The Harrises used that as a cover to run and drive away with Hearst at the wheel.
Little did they know they were cyanide handcuffs.
Now, the trio abandoned the van, but the van had a parking ticket in it that the police were able to use to identify the group's safe house. But the news had picked up the story, and the SLA literally found out the cops were on their way to their safe house on the news.
Oh, Jesus.
And so they fled.
Hup, no gasoline. Dave, no gasoline.
They took over a new house, but an anonymous call to the police tipped them to the SLA's location. The Harrises and Hearst didn't head back to the safe house, but instead fucked off to a hotel in Anaheim to lay low.
Yeah, we can't afford to draw attention to ourselves, guys. So only 1 crate of guns per van from here on out, okay? Be strict now.
400 LAPD officers, along with SWAT teams, surrounded the residential house and ordered anyone inside to come out. An old man and a kid walked out, and the old man tried to pretend that there was no one else in the house, but the kid was all like, yeah, there are. There's like a whole bunch of them. They have like 1 million guns. What the fuck are you talking about?
One guy keeps doing stuff with gasoline. It makes no sense. I don't know. Get him out of there.
The cops got tired of waiting, and basically all hell broke loose. First, the cops started shooting tear gas into the house, but then the SLA began shooting bullets out of the house. And then the cops started shooting their bullets into the house. Yeah. So the SLA started throwing homemade grenades, and the police responded with Waco brand tear gas that caught the house on fire. The first 2 to leave were 2 women who had nothing to do with anything except to have passed out drunk in the worst house imaginable the night before. They weren't shot by anyone, and that is kind of a miracle.
Yeah, the SWAT team was chewed out for that. Wow, man.
Woo. Well, it's just a good sign that the SLA guys were lobbing homemade grenades into a residential area responsibly. That's important.
Now, the next part is a little controversial, but basically everyone died. Some people argue that 2 of the women SLA members were gunned down by the cops as they tried to flee the burning building. But the cops say that the women were shooting as they left the house and were shot in return. Now, since there are no body cams, it's probably wise to err on the side of the most likely possibility and thus conclude that the cops shot them as they were trying to surrender unarmed. DeFries, the leader of this whole mess, committed suicide in the house, and the SLA was no more. Thousands of rounds of high-power ammunition had been fired into and out of the SLA safe house in the siege. Of the 4,000 rounds fired by the SLA, not a single bullet struck anyone. Not one. And
the one he shot himself with.
Well, yeah, right, okay, yeah, out of the house. The bullets out of the house.
Right, yeah. Gotcha.
And the entire thing had been broadcast live on television. So the Harrises and Hearst watched the footage live from their hotel rooms.
Stormtrooper watching with his wife. See, it's harder than people think. They make a whole big deal. Ooh, we saw it.
Patty Hearst was herself captured on September 18th, 1975, along with the Harrises and a couple of nobodies. Hearst has always claimed that her involvement with the SLA was involuntary, that she was drugged, coerced, and brainwashed into complying with and acting as a member of the terrorist cult. But because we are a cruel and punitive society, Hearst was convicted of the Hibernia bank robbery and sentenced to 7 years in prison rather than given counseling for being kidnapped by a terrorist organization. After 21 months, former president and all-around good guy Jimmy Carter commuted her sentence, and Bill Clinton later formally pardoned Patricia Hearst.
And if you had to summarize what you learned in one sentence, what would it be, Tom?
Don't join the SLA.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. That would have saved her a lot of trouble. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Are you ready for the quiz?
I am. Let's do it.
All right, Tom, which of the following things are true about Patty Hearst that we didn't talk about? A, her Shih Tzu named Rocket, her French Bulldog named Tuggy, and her other French Bulldog named Ruby have all won awards at the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show. Madison Square Garden in New York. B, she was given a stone trinket by one of the men in the Liberation Army, and during her trial, the prosecution pointed out that she didn't destroy it or throw it away, and therefore it was a consensual relationship that she was having with a kidnapper.
Oh my God. That is definitely true. Okay.
C, everyone involved in the prosecution should get kidnapped and forced to learn about Stockholm Syndrome until they have Stockholm Syndrome. And then Patty Hearst gets to make them all do, I don't know, one ridiculous favor, anything she wants. Something with dog shit, maybe. She has dogs, apparently.
All right, well, A is adorable, so I just know that that's true. That speaks to your heart, Heath. Mm-hmm. And B is America, and C is it's D, all of the above.
I hadn't said that yet, but yes, D, all of the above was available. That's correct.
Nailed it.
All right, I got one for you here, Tom.
Yes.
Which of the following are true things about Donald DeFries that we didn't talk about? A, his first shootout started over a misunderstanding about what a cop meant by disarming him. He'd have a complicated past in that regard.
Disarming.
B, his marriage was literally harder to escape than his prison. D, he always made ice-based puns when he fought with Batman.
DeFries.
D, he thought, we're a lot like face mites was a great name for his revolutionary gang. Or E, all of the above.
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, obviously, B, his marriage was literally hard to escape than his prison.
That's right. He never did fight Batman. Well done. I thought you'd go with E. I thought I'd get you.
We were a lot like face fights. Liberation Army.
Tom, what's the film adaptation of this story called?
Oh, goody.
Oh, okay.
A, Lock, Stockholm Syndrome, and 2 Smoking Barrels.
Perfect.
B, Anarchist, Kissed, Bang, Bang. C, 10 Things I Liberate About You. Or D, Proletariats of Fire.
Oh,
well done, sir.
Proletariats of Fire is so good, but I'm gonna go with A, Lock, Stockholm Syndrome, and 2 Smoking Barrels.
Oh, Oh, yes. I
Sure.
think so.
I mean, why
Good.
not, dude? Honestly, on the strength of Proletariats of Fire alone, you win this week.
Okay, well, then I guess I'll pick Heath.
All right.
Let's do this.
Well, for Cecil, Heath, and Tom, I'm Noah. Thanking you for hanging out with us today. We're going to be back next week, and by then, Heath will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, be sure to check out Tom and Eli's new show, Dear Old Dads, because apparently when they do an entire podcast about their kids, it's sweet. When I do it, it's creepy. Bullshit. Fucking double standard nonsense. Anyway, if you'd like to help keep this show going, you can make a per episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod or leave us a 5-star review everywhere you can. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, or check the show notes, be sure to check out citationpod.com.
Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/get-started. That's GREENLIGHT.com/get-started.